Hi everyone, this is Balázs and you are watching RB's Gadget Reviews. You've already seen my review of the smaller Kada and Rastar F1 cars. Today we are going to take a closer look at their bigger brothers. Let's start with the Red Bull set. This is a Rastar release that is fully licensed as you can see on the box, and there are more details and some close-ups on the back. Taking the lid off, we find some nice artwork, but the inside is less tidy. There are 13 numbered bags in there, the sticker sheets and the instructions. The manual is similar to the smaller version. We find some data about the real car and the renderings about the brick-built car. This is the non-motorized version, but I always get a little confused with these sets because as you can see, in addition to the basic numbered bags, we also need to open bag 9 as this contains the pins and other smaller parts. We start the build with the rear axle, the differential and hubs are in place, and now it's time to add the suspension components, but I've noticed a strange thing. The shock absorbers are supposed to go here, but for some strange reason, they are not attached to anything at the bottom. It is secured at the top, different forces will try to push the parts apart in different directions. Let's see how stable this solution is. This is the build at the end of the first phase. The chassis will be significantly extended in the next phase. We have also started to add components for the steering. With parts from bag 3, we build the front suspension and steering, but it doesn't really work yet. More parts are needed. At least I hope it will get better as we go along. There are no gears between the steering wheel and the steering rack, so they should be aligned. In phase 4, we install the engine, which is driven by the rear wheels via the differential. It will be completely covered, so you can't see the pistons moving. The front has a lot of blue pieces. Unfortunately, in the manual, it is extremely difficult to tell the black and blue parts apart, and since there are many parts in both colors, this makes identification even more annoying. In phase 5, we cover the side pods, which have an interesting sloping structure. There is also a brick-built assembly around the cockpit and we have custom rear-view mirrors that look pretty cool. We have applied the first sticker, which is somewhat unusual with its matte surface, and here is the hand-of-God steering knob, which finally makes the steering properly functional. Next, we build the engine cover and the camera pod section. The Red Bull sticker is the worst so far. It covers several parts, can't be stuck on properly, and because it has a hole in it, it tore off when I tried to remove it from the sheet. The nose cone is a single assembly that is a bit difficult to attach. The rear wing is a little easier, and only a few parts needed to be added before the wheels. We have different rim and tire sizes for front and rear, which is great, but one of my wider tires is incomplete, fortunately on the inside, but that's still a shame. The wheels are easy to fit. I can say the same for the wheel covers. According to the instructions, I thought that the ones with the longer pins belonged at the back, but I could only fit them the other way around. Finished with the build, now it's time to apply the zillion stickers all at once. I didn't film the process because I didn't want to beep the whole time, but this was probably my most frustrating sticker application process ever. I think I will put the set aside until things calm down a bit and now we will build the Kada set. The box has nice artwork on the front, more details about the different features on the back, and this set is also officially licensed. Inside are two smaller, nicely printed boxes, one with all the bags and the instructions, the other with the tires and rims. The build approach seems to be different here, only 4 bag numbers, so we will have a lot to open at once. As you can see, the set is fully printed, no stickers. We have parts printed together on some yellow support pieces. We've already seen this on the smaller set. The manual is thick and have an amazing amount of photos and information about the Sauber team, its history and even detailed descriptions of the drivers. Very cool pages with the same shots about the real car and the brick-built version. Kada have really added a lot of extras here. We can customize the build for both drivers, that's a nice thing too. Let's start building. This is the number of parts we have to work with in phase 1. This is more the old way of packaging. If you miss that, you will like this set. The build starts with the rear axle. This is Kada's typical black on black design. The target audience likes it, I'm not the biggest fan, but if you keep the contents of the bags more or less separate on your table, it's not that difficult to find the parts. This is pretty interesting, carbon fiber cross axles. You can easily tell them apart from the plastic ones because they sound different and are of course less flexible. This is our differential. Here are the first printed parts of the set, and we are putting together what we built so far, at least we are trying to, because there are quite a few pins to align, so it might be more difficult than you thought. This is the moment before we attach the wheel hubs. There are a lot of parts hanging all over the place. The assembly was really not easy. I had to check the instructions twice. The suspension is now working, even if there is a loud clicking sound at one point, as if parts are colliding. Here you can see the double shock absorbers in action. Here is our completely brick-built V6 engine. It runs well, but there are so many different parts to hold together during assembly that you really wish you had more than 10 fingers. We are attaching the major parts we built so far, and surprisingly we have to build two large fully studded assemblies for reinforcement, and they hold everything together well. This assembly has hoses, train wheels, and a bunch of other stuff. If you are having trouble fitting the hoses onto these T-shaped pieces, you are not alone. But we are not done here. The engine is still getting more detailed. It looks pretty cool. Added these panels under the rear axle. I'm not sure if I've done something wrong here, but the beam and the assembly are visibly bent, and this part here is also twisted. Anyway, that's the end of phase 1. Next, we build the front axle with the steering. The steering rack and the axle underneath should be properly centered, so that the output axle is also centered here. We have pull rod suspension that seems to work, but it's quite painful to watch these parts bend during this process. The printed front wheel deflectors rotate with the wheels, which is a nice touch. Time to choose our driver. We have two printed panels here. I have chosen Bottas for the smaller car. Now I will choose you. Now we need to put the two main assemblies together. Connecting the universal joint there is a bit tricky but doable. I've added some blue and orange details. If you know what these represent, let me know in the comments. As you can see, the underside is also constantly being shaped. This lever here will operate the DRS function. Some tricky assemblies with many half-module offsets have been added here. I had to correct a few mistakes I made, and here comes something else quite complicated. I wonder what this is for. And the last item in phase 2 is the customized steering wheel. I'm not going to show you how I managed to fit this angled assembly to the side, as it took me about 5 minutes, but if you take a look at the instructions, you might be able to imagine why. And the complexity doesn't stop there, as we also have some weird angles and parts in this assembly. Finally, it's in place. The flex axles represent the inventory tunnels under the car. There are more tricky connections in this section, mostly using toe balls, and you have to figure out the exact position with each of them. I think some might consider these freestyle connections cheating, but the impossible angles certainly help with body sculpting. The side pods are more or less done, and the mirrors are in place too. This is the end of phase 3. In the last bags, we find a lot of pre-assembled prints, as we have already seen on the smaller car. Some of them are on the familiar yellow supports, which will be removed, but others will apparently be attached like this. We start to build the nose, and you can see that many of the printed parts are already in place. I like these small panel fairings, and here's an interesting solution. We are literally bending plastic this time. Inserting the assembly also requires some fiddling, but the joining method is actually quite clever. This is another very unconventional way of connecting things. The assembly is surprisingly sturdy, by the way, and yes, the gray thing is a claw part. And then there's a rubber at the end that holds everything together. Okay. The front wing looks very cool once assembled, and the stability has also improved, although the components can still be moved around. Now it's time to attach the nose cone. Next up is the rear wing. It took me a while to figure out the arrangement, but I think this is how the DRS will work. The rear wing is in place and we can test the DRS. Well, it kind of works, but I'm not sure if that's the full range. The concept is good, but the part usage with the red piece and the 1x2 tile is very unfortunate. The part can be knocked off at any time. The assembly of the camera pod with hand-of-God steering integration is also quite complex. We are done with this section, it needs to be attached here. Here comes the engine cover and the fully custom and printed halo that should fit here. It's time to mount the wheels. We also have two sizes of rims and tires. Everything is nicely printed. Mounting the front wheels is easier as the wheel hub is attached to the rim first. We get a very nice fully printed plug, and the last part is the hand-of-God steering knob. We are done. So here are the two cars side by side. They are both pretty big and from a certain distance they look very promising. But the devil is in the detail. As I mentioned earlier, I struggled with the stickers on the Red Bull. I don't like those big matte stickers spread across multiple pieces, and some of the transparent stickers were also quite a challenge to apply. In terms of functionality, the steering wheel is connected to the front wheels and there is also a hand-of-God steering knob. The front suspension only seems to work because these links are bending very badly. It's quite painful to watch. The rear suspension works a little better. The engine cover can be removed in two pieces, but you can't really see the pistons in action, so there's not much to see here. The construction itself is otherwise okay. There are no very complex details. the nose cone is somewhat weak and these winglets can also be easily knocked off. I was rather disappointed by the color variation of the same parts, which made the building process challenging, and also by the stickers. The Coda set also has functional steering. The steering wheel rotates and can be operated with this removable knob. The DRS can be operated from the cockpit, it works somehow, but the part usage is not very good here, as you could see before. The suspension works front and rear, although it doesn't really rely on the shock absorbers themselves. As you can see, it's more like the parts bend where the links are attached. The engine cover is removable. There's a lot of nice brick build detail in this area, which is worth checking out. This car has a lot more detail overall, such as the custom halo, the steering wheel, lots of special parts, and of course the prints everywhere. There are also cool little details along the bottom, and the representation of the Venturi tunnels and the whole underside looks great. But at the same time, there are many freestyle building solutions. A lot of ball joints are used to achieve the different angles, which isn't necessarily bad, but I feel like the parts are often forced, sometimes even bent, and the whole sidepod assembly is a gamble to get it right. If you are a fan of complex builds and can handle the all-black interior, you might enjoy this set, but be prepared to do a lot of freestyle building and occasionally bend plastic. I bought the Rastar set for $128. The Coda set is available for $190 from the official store. I've seen some impossibly low prices for this set, but I prefer to trust the official source. Like I said, I would only go for the Rastar Red Bull if I really wanted those properly sized wheels. The Coda set, on the other hand, can be a good choice for the price, but be warned, due to the complexity, this shouldn't be your first build of this type. So folks, please let me know what you think of these two sets, how you like them. Let's talk about it in the comments section. See you next time, bye bye.